The first thing she noticed was the sound. Not the officer's voice, not the shouting from across the street, but the violence of water ripping through the air, slamming into her face with such force it knocked the breath from her lungs. In that instant, dignity disappeared. Control vanished. All that existed was pressure, noise, and the unbearable certainty that something had gone terribly wrong in a place that was supposed to be safe. She fell backward onto her own lawn, palms scraping grass, spine hitting hard earth. The hose never stopped. Water struck her mouth, her nose, her eyes. She tried to turn her head and couldn't, tried to speak and swallowed water instead. Somewhere above her, laughter cut through the chaos, sharp, mocking, cruel, the kind of laughter that assumes there will be no consequences. "This is what happens," the officer barked, his voice thick with contempt, "when you people think you belong." The world narrowed to pain and humiliation. Seconds stretched. Her chest burned. Her ears rang. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the water stopped. She lay there gasping, soaked through, mascara streaking down her cheeks, clothes clinging to her skin. Phones hovered above her like vultures. Neighbors lined the sidewalk, frozen between horror and disbelief. The officer stood over her, breathing hard, satisfied. That was when she decided she would not stay on the ground. Earlier that morning had been quiet. Ordinary. The kind of morning that feels like a reward earned after decades of relentless discipline. Sunlight filtered through tall trees lining the street, dappling pristine sidewalks and manicured lawns. The neighborhood was old money calm, the kind of place where silence was expensive and suspicion came free. Dr. Alana Pierce had lived there for 6 years. She woke before 6, as she always did, brewed coffee strong enough to anchor her thoughts, and reviewed notes for the day ahead. A full docket, complex cases, power wielded carefully, deliberately. She changed into casual clothes, jeans, an old blouse, and stepped outside with the one indulgence she allowed herself before work, tending her garden. Gardening grounded her. It was the one place titles didn't matter. Soil didn't care about resumes or courtrooms. It responded only to patience. She was adjusting the spray on the hose when the patrol car slowed. She noticed it only vaguely at first. Police cruisers passed through the neighborhood often enough, usually without incident. She kept watering, humming softly until she felt it. That unmistakable sensation of being watched. "Hey!" The voice was sharp, commanding. She turned to see a uniformed officer stepping over her low fence, already on her lawn, hand resting near his belt. His partner remained in the car, staring straight ahead. "Yes," she said, keeping her tone even. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm watering my garden." His eyes scanned the house behind her, lingering, judging. "This your place?" "Yes." He scoffed, the sound dripping disbelief. "You expect me to believe that?" Her grip tightened on the hose. "Is there a reason you're questioning me on my own property?" "I'll decide the reasons," he said, stepping closer. "We've had reports, suspicious activity." She looked around, roses, a porch, morning light. "Suspicious how?" "You don't fit." The words landed heavy, unmistakable. She had spent her entire career dissecting language. She knew exactly what he meant. A neighbor's voice rose from next door, tentative but firm. "Officer, she lives there." He snapped his head toward the voice. "Ma'am, stay out of this." Phones began to appear, subtly at first, then openly. Dr. Pierce felt the familiar calculation form in her mind. She could end this now. Walk inside, retrieve identification, credentials, proof that would make him shrink. But she didn't, because she had done nothing wrong. "I'd like your name and badge number," she said. His face hardened. "You're getting real mouthy. And you're overstepping." That was when everything shifted. He accused her of trespassing, of lying, of not belonging, each sentence sharper than the last. He demanded documents, threatened detention, laughed when she asserted her rights. When she stumbled, just slightly over the hose, when a few stray drops splashed his uniform, something in him snapped. "What did you just do?" he shouted. "I tripped." He didn't hear it, or didn't care. In one violent motion, he grabbed the hose, twisted the nozzle, and unleashed it on her with full force. The crowd erupted. Someone screamed. Someone shouted for him to stop. He didn't. By the time it ended, she was on the ground, drenched, shaking, stripped of dignity in front of her neighbors. Silence followed. Heavy, electric. She sat up slowly. Every movement deliberate. Water dripped from her hair, her sleeves, the edges of her vision. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and looked up at him. Her voice, when it came, was calm. "You've just destroyed your career." He laughed. Then she reached into her pocket, and everything changed. She pulled out a slim metal case, opened it with hands that no longer shook, held it up where every camera could see. The seal caught the sunlight. The officer's smile vanished. His face drained of color. She stood fully now, spine straight, soaked but unbroken, authority radiating not from volume but from certainty. "My name is Dr. Alana Pierce," she said evenly, "and you just assaulted a federal judge." The street went silent. After a beat, she added, "This is part one of your accountability." She closed the case and waited. The street stayed silent after the badge appeared, like the city itself was holding its breath. Phones remained raised, but no one spoke. The officer, who had moments earlier barked commands, now stood frozen. His authority evaporated in real time. The hose lay forgotten in the grass, still leaking, water pooling around polished shoes and torn petals. The woman he tried to break stood straighter now, soaked and shaking, but unbowed. Power had shifted without a single step forward. Sirens arrived before anyone found their voice. Not one, but several. Patrol cars lined the block, lights flashing against the quiet houses like accusations. Supervisors moved quickly, speaking low, eyes darting to the cameras, to the neighbors, to the woman at the center of it all. She didn't demand anything. She didn't shout. She simply watched as the system that had protected him scrambled to protect itself. The officer was separated from his partner, from the crowd, from the badge that no longer shielded him. His radio was taken. His hands trembled as instructions came through earpieces that suddenly sounded different. The neighbors, who had been afraid minutes earlier, now stood firm. One by one, they stepped forward, offering names, footage, statements. What had been a private act of humiliation became a public record. She was given a towel, then another. Someone brought a chair. She declined it. Standing mattered. Cameras captured the moment she straightened her shoulders and spoke, not to the officer, but to everyone watching. Her voice didn't carry anger. It carried clarity. She described what happened in plain language, without embellishment, without emotion. The facts were damning enough. By afternoon, the footage had spread beyond the block, beyond the city. Clips looped on screens everywhere. The moment the water hit, the moment the badge opened, the moment the officer's face drained of certainty. Commentators argued, officials issued statements, but the images did all the work. There was no debate left in them, just truth. The department moved fast, faster than it ever had before. Suspension became termination before the sun set. Press conferences were scheduled, then rescheduled. Apologies were drafted and redrafted, each one sounding hollow beside the footage. Investigators arrived with notebooks already thick, questions already answered by video. The officer sat alone in a small room that smelled like disinfectant and regret. His uniform hung loose now, like a costume he no longer belonged in. Every justification he rehearsed collapsed under the weight of what people had seen. Silence replaced the confidence he once wore easily. For the first time, no one was required to listen to him. Days later, the street returned to its routine, but nothing felt the same. Neighbors waved more. Conversations lingered. People looked at each other longer as if measuring courage. The woman returned to her garden. The roses were damaged, stems bent, soil torn up by boots and cameras. She knelt and began to replant. Not because it erased what happened, but because growth was its own answer. Letters arrived by the hundreds. Some were apologies from strangers. Others were stories, long-held pain finally finding a place to land. She read them carefully, late at night, understanding the responsibility that came with surviving something so visible. Being seen was a burden, but it was also leverage. The case moved forward methodically. Charges were filed, evidence stacked high. The language of accountability replaced the language of excuses. Every hearing drew a crowd, not out of spectacle, but recognition. People saw themselves in her, and they wanted to see what justice looked like when it wasn't rushed, when it wasn't denied. When the verdict came, it wasn't dramatic. No gasps, no cheers. Just a quiet acknowledgement that actions have weight, that power is not permanent, that silence can be broken. The sentence followed. Consequences, finally matching harm. Months later, she stood before a room filled with people who had once been told they didn't belong in rooms like this. She didn't give a fiery speech. She didn't need to. She told them what she had learned. That dignity is not granted by uniforms or neighborhoods. That recording matters. That standing still can be as powerful as standing up. She ended with a pause, letting the silence do what it had done before. Then she smiled, just slightly, and stepped away from the podium. The applause came after, but it wasn't the point. Back home, the roses bloomed again. New ones, stronger. The hose stayed coiled neatly by the porch, unused but no longer feared. Mornings returned to being quiet. But the quiet was different now. It wasn't fragile. It was earned. What happened on that lawn could never be undone, but it didn't need to be. It had already done its work. Power had been exposed. Authority had been corrected. And a story that began with humiliation ended with something rarer: accountability.